Yeah, so it's interesting because in gaming, there's some things that actually I would agree with, but I think there's some differences too. I mean, for example, who owned it could be relevant. If somebody, for example, happened to own it's a famous person. Let's call it a Twitcher. Let's say there's a famous Twitcher that happens to play your game, own some items, and then decides to sell them on. Just the mere fact that they were, you know, famous. For some people, that means something. And what's cool about it doing this on chain is you can display that if you store the information in the right way. So, from our standpoint of building a game and being able to capture the user data, not like your private information, but like a username, for example, that might be a game name, or a Twitcher could have a Twitcher name. So if we can demonstrate and prove that certain people owned certain assets, that's one way that we can see that there's some potential value in terms of tradable assets. Another tends to be the idea of rarity. The harder something is to find, or the fact that you gained access to a secret room, chamber, location, and that you've got it, no one else does, and everyone goes, whoa, how did you get that? Like, I don't know. I did these things and I've got this thing now, and it's unlocking new things for me in the game, and everyone else is like, oh, I want that too. It creates a FOMO. So I think that, it's not meant to be that level of FOMO creates the sudden value of the NFT, but it should at least hold the value, because it means other people can benefit from it later on. Because once a user has accomplished what they need to with an item and other people want it, then there's going to be some form of equilibrium between those who want something and those who can gain access to it. And I think for us, the trick is to make sure there's just enough of them around that items don't become excessively expensive, but at the same time, not too many, that they are rare enough that people are competing to gain access to them, but also it makes them work harder. And again, that's about the collect and earn. If you have to work harder to find something, then what you collect as a result is a reward for finding it is what is the reward. The third is a different form of rarity that we're playing around with, which is like a mini alpha drop. I won't give away too much detail, but the idea that if we were to drop information out in, let's say, a newsletter format, but the newsletter was an NFT, and if you don't buy the first edition of the NFT that has specific news and information and suggestions or hints, well, it's kind of like, having the first edition of the Superman comic book. You don't have that one, and now there's so few of them around. But if you could imagine in a game where information, suggestions, hints, tips, pointers could be dropped into other forms of information throughout a game. And if you don't happen to buy a really cheap item, and then it's a limited supply, it's only available for a week and then it's gone, stop selling them, then only those who got that item are going to realize later on they should have bought the items, and oh my God, I don't have it. And now the people who do own it will, of course, use it for their own purposes when they realize what may or may not be in that item. And at some point they may sell it on, but it may become collectible because it has a value to other players. So those are kind of different elements or aspects of how we're playing around with it. And then of course there's other aspects of things that just become collectible because they're tied back to not just a game, but maybe the franchise of the company that we build upon. We don't have to be limited to just making a game. So a character could become famous. I don't know if we'll end up with a Superman character, but if we did, just saying that you owned certain characters could eventually become valuable too. So we see this as expansive in nature, and it's not just for collectors, it's for many different types of people who are participating, playing, collecting, earning.